our speakers come up. We have Senator Shane Massey, Representative Bill Hickson, and Senator Tom Young. Give them a round of applause.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can y'all hear us? We've got a PowerPoint presentation that we put together this morning with a few issues in it, and as well as a good, I think a fairly good summary of some of the high point issues and bills that may pass or did not pass in Columbia this past legislative session. The legislature is not in session. We completed the session back in the middle of June. I think it was June the 15th. We went back for vetoes and we dealt with that and any last minute things. And so we've been out about 2 months, and now we go back in session. I think it's the first week in December for probably, I think, 2 days for what's called an organizational session, which is something that's done every 4 years in the Senate, and I think it's every 2 years in the House, which will be after the November elections. And then the regular session starts back the second Tuesday in January.
Can I say
Yes,
something
sir.
about the organizational session is fun. It's sort of like first graders going back, or second graders going back after they've been, we're all, hey, how you doing? Good to see you, good to see you. But what we do we do little things different in the House. We take all the names off the 124 desk, and so no one knows where anybody's gonna sit. So everybody just jockeying around to see where they're gonna sit, and they put all the counties in a big fishbowl. And they have a little girl every year come up and draw the counties. And then when you draw the counties, you go see where you're gonna sit. So it's real comical. It's funny because people are fighting over seats and all, just like little kids and everything. But I mean, our Aiken group tried to sit together, and luckily, for my 6 years being there, I've always sat at desk 3 because it's right up front, because my mom always told me to sit up front where you'll pay attention, and that's what I've been trying to do ever since I've been there. So, but anyway, but the Senate, they sit in seniority. And so I guess y'all are pretty much, you'll move up a little bit because you had a few changeovers, but,
Yeah, we're going to show you some of that here in a minute. But, anyway. All right, first thing we want to do is we want to thank y'all for the honor to represent our districts in the General Assembly. And just real quickly, I'm Tom Young, and I represent Senate District 24, which is all within Aiken County, and all of the North Augusta part of Aiken County is in Senate District 24.
I'm Bill Hickson. I represent House District 83, which takes in all of North Augusta, Belvedere, and a good part of Edgefield County.
And I'm Shane Massey. I've got like half the state. Now, I live in Edgefield, but actually have more people in Aiken County than any other part. I have 5 counties: Aiken, Edgefield, Lexington, McCormick, and Saluda. So I have all the Edgefield part of North Augusta. I've also got Belvedere, and come down to Tom and I kind of sandwich in pretty close to North Augusta.
We each have an email update that we send out. And I know that many of y'all are on maybe all 3 of our lists, maybe 1 of our lists, 2 of our lists. But if you want to be on any of our lists to receive an email, if you will get any of us your email address, we will add. Somebody, Mr. Berg gave his new email this morning. I'm going to add him to my list. So if you've got, if you want to be on our email list, I send mine every week that we're in the session, and about twice a month when we're not in session. And these guys send them about on the same rotation as well. Shane, you want to talk about this?
Sure. So we have 46 members in the Senate, right, 1 for each county initially. We had 45 for most of the year up until like the last 2 weeks. We had Senator Billy O'Dell, who lived in Anderson, who died in the very beginning of 2017. His replacement was elected in the middle of May, so we were at 45 most of the year. But we are fully staffed now. We're at 46 now. There are 28 Republicans and 18 Democrats now. It's 4-year terms, and all of us are up this year. In fact, the entire General Assembly is up this year. All of us are up, and Yeah, the way the districts are drawn now, there really aren't a whole lot of general election fights. So we've got probably 3, maybe 4 Senate seats that are really in play in the November election. Most everything else is decided in the primaries, if there's even an election. Like, you get people lucky like Tom, who don't get a vote. I'm a little bitter.
You do a good
But
job.
if you look at the fourth point there, I think it's an important point too. There has been a tremendous amount of turnover in the Senate just the last 10 years. And I'll start with me. So I was elected in 2007, and I came in as number 46 in seniority, and I'm now going to be number 20. And so we've got, I think there are 8 members who are expected to be elected this year. 8 new ones coming in this year. There were probably 8 or 9 that came in with you.
10.
10 that came in in 13. Then we had a new one in 14, a new one in 15, I think, or maybe 2 new ones in 15. And then a new one this year too. So there's been a lot of turnover in the Senate in just the last few years.
All right, as you can see, there are 124 of us, 78 Republicans and 46 Democrats, and we serve 2-year terms. So we're running every day. You see us, we trying to find people and ask for your vote. 14 were brand new in 2014, 2016 the election. What we got is we had 14 that they elected not to run. They just said they weren't going to run. And then we had another 4 that got beat. So we have constant turnover in the House with us also. I mean, it's quite interesting. People talk about term limits. You just keep going on. It is making a turn, not a term. So we're constantly getting new House members. And so, again, as of right now, we think we're going to get 18. But after November, there could be a few more. But the way things look, it looks like there's probably going to be 18 new members. And that's what we're going to have in the House.
Okay, so one of the bills that passed this session was a bill to shorten the legislative session. The session under the immediate past schedule that we've dealt with for several years would be starting on the second Tuesday in January, meet 3 days a week for every week until the first Thursday in June at 5 o'clock. And then the General Assembly would adjourn and come back for any unfinished business at the call of usually the President Pro Tem of the Senate and the Speaker of the House. And that usually dealt with, dealing with some vetoes and maybe some very high-profile bills such as the reapportionment bill in 2011 or the roads bill or some of the other things that have been real high-profile. This bill passed, and what it does is it shortens the legislative session by probably 3 weeks. And in some years it'll be 4 weeks, but it should shorten it by 3 weeks. I know it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it was progress. We've been trying to get this bill passed for several years, and it finally passed this session.
The Farm Aid bill, I'll take that one because I serve on ag in the House. We had all the flooding and all that, and a lot of farmers lost a lot of their crops. The governor had a chance to sign a bill that was going to get $78 or $80 million or something like that from Washington. She did not sign that. All she had to do was sign it, and it would help the farmers. So we, as good citizens and people that like to eat and enjoy what the farmers do for us, we come up with a bill, and I believe it's $40 million is what we come up with of our state dollars, and you will have to apply for it. It's not everybody just come line up and get it. You'll have to apply for it and show your need for it, and there's going to be an opportunity to get $40 million. Not per person. I think it's the most it's going to be per farmer, like maybe 100,000 or something like that. But for instance, where I hunt down at Thousand Plantation, they lost their whole peanut crop, and they didn't have any insurance on it. They had it up, but it rained, and it all molded, and so they lost $85,000 right there. That's just a little farm that I hunt on in Aiken County. But as you can also see, the governor vetoed that. So, you know, the farmers, they say, why is she against us? We never figured that one out, but we overrode the veto.
Any car dealers in the room? Last November, there was a pretty significant Supreme Court decision that dealt with closing fees that some car dealers, not all of them, but some car dealers charge when you buy a new car. Or even, I guess even a used car in some cases, don't apply there. And that opinion threw a lot of car dealers for a loop, because they all thought they'd been operating, they all thought they understood what the law was for the last 15 or 16 years, and all of a sudden the court changed it up. And the result of that was that there were over 200 car dealers who had lawsuits against them pretty quickly. And so you can imagine that that got a lot of their attention. There was actually a trial in Aiken a couple of years ago that was a defense verdict, was in favor of the car dealer, but there was a trial up in Pickens County where a lady who had bought a car and paid, I think it was a $199 car fee, closing fee on her car, sued for, and I won't get into all the technical legal stuff, but she sued because of that, and other people came in and joined with her in a class action, and it ends up being a multi-million-dollar verdict. Well, if you have a multi-million-dollar verdict against 200 car dealers, that was spread out, you got potential for a real big problem. And so we spent a good bit of this last year trying to fix that issue, trying to respond to the court, but also trying to make something that the car dealers can live with, and that was also going to be beneficial to consumers, so that you're not going to get screwed over when you go to buy a car. And I think the main idea here is you know, my thought on this is that the purchase of a car is probably the most negotiated transaction in the country. Right? If anybody goes to a dealership and pays what's on the sticker, bad news. Right? And everybody knows that. But I think our goal really was to ensure that you got all the information when you get it, that if they're going to charge a closing fee, they tell you what it is up front, and then move forward with it like that, so that you can make the best decision that you can make. And if you don't like what the deal is, then you can walk away. Right? There's another dealership right down the street most of the time. But this had a lot of attention in the General Assembly of this year, especially on the Senate side. We were finally able to get it done right at the end.
The state grand jury insurance fraud. The state grand jury is a tool that exists for law enforcement in the state to investigate suspected crimes. And what we learned was that there were some insurance fraud rings that had been operating in the state that went beyond a county border, went into multiple counties, and some of those counties went into multiple judicial circuits. And so, so one of the things that we were told by the Attorney General's office in law enforcement was that one of the tools that they needed to be able to use to investigate these multi-county, multi-circuit fraud rings was the state grand jury. And so we passed legislation to give law enforcement this additional tool to try to identify insurance fraud rings and bring those to justice.
The Freedom of Information Act, as you can see, it did not pass. I believe I'm correct, House Bill 3191 is one of our own, Representative Bill Taylor. I believe that's his bill from over in Aiken. Different government agencies perform different when you ask for information. Some of them give it to you immediately. Some of them try to stonewall you. Some of them want to charge you absorbent prices for every copy. And Representative Taylor has a lot of examples of what had happened to some of his constituents and all on trying to receive information, whether it be from a city or a county or a school board or whatever. It was not consistent. And so he decided to put up House Bill 3191, and it's been a constant fight ever since he's tried to do it. You got the television stations that like one way, you got a newspaper that like another way, you got a city that likes it another way, you got the police that get into it about, you know, what you need to release about a crime or whatever. So it's real convoluted. And so, we're still trying to work through the details, but I will say one thing. Any of these bills that you see passed, they're gone and they're gonna become law. But the ones that you see that aren't passed, they're dead. And so they'll have to be restarted over again when we go back in 2017. But the Freedom of Information Act, it did not pass.
We think there's a really good chance that it'll get passed this coming session. There was a lot of support for it in the Senate. We had one senator who was adamantly opposed to it, and she used the procedural rules to stop the bill late in the session, and it got a lot of press. You may have read about that. And so that's one reason why there's going to be a discussion about the Senate rules, and we got a slide on that in here in a minute. Shoreline management, what this bill does is it sets the boundary for development on the coast as of 2017, so that the coastal development boundary cannot extend any further seaward. In other words, you can't build any closer to the ocean than what's set by the Department of Health and Environmental Control in next year, 2017. Once it's set, and you can't have any further encroachment toward the ocean. This was a big issue on the coast. We don't hear as much about it here, but it went on. This bill was, it's Senate Bill 139. It got filed in early of 2015, and 2 year debate. It actually extended back before that, but it did get passed, and it sets the boundary as of 2017.
Right to try is a very interesting bill. When you're dying, really dying, you'll try anything to try to stay alive, most people. And there's all kind of experimental drugs and experimental ways to get you well and to help you. And there's some laws in our state and federal laws that also say you can't do this stuff, some of this stuff. So what we did is we passed this bill. So it gives a person, just as the bill says, the right to try something that's going to try to get them well or keep them if they're on their deathbed or close to death, and there's no way they're going to be able to, almost no way they're going to be able to make it, to try something that will help them. And we just thought that was a humane thing, and it's something to try. You know, when you're dying, you know, sort of like the drowning man, you grab for a straw. This is the same thing we did about this bill. So someone who's dying and is willing to try an experimental drug, we thought they should have that right. And so that's something that it passed, I think, unanimously in pretty much both the House and the Senate. 29
states have passed this type of legislation, and the types of drugs that would be allowed are drugs that have already passed the first phase of FDA approval, but they may not have passed final FDA approval. But this allows those patients who maybe have a terminal illness, like Bill said, to take drugs that they might not necessarily have been allowed to take before this legislation passed.
The official law enforcement position is that there are no ticket quotas. Right? If you talk to the guys and the ladies on the force, they will tell you there is a tremendous amount of pressure to write a certain number of tickets or a certain number of warnings, to have a certain number of interactions with the public, and to have those things documented. And in some areas, especially some of the smaller municipalities, it's an even bigger problem, right? We all know about speed traps in certain places. And this was a bill that one of the House members pushed forward, and it actually got a decent amount of resistance. But the idea is to make it clear in state law that there cannot be any type of quotas imposed on law enforcement for writing tickets.
One of the things, we have I won't call his name, but we have an old retired highway patrolman that's in the house with us. He got up there and he really embarrassed himself. He got up there and he said, well, how are we going, when he's standing there patrolling, how are we going to be able to tell whether the boys are working or not if we can't look at their ticket book and see how many tickets they wrote? And we said, Dennis, sit down. I didn't say his name. I didn't tell you his last name. But anyway, it was a deal where he was a sergeant on the highway patrol, and that's how they kept up with how hard the highway patrol was working. back in those days. He's so old, he didn't remember what he said. Anyway. The 20-week abortion ban, that was mighty interesting. And it took a lot of work to get that done, and it's the pain-capable bill where our state outlawed abortions on before the 20th week. So you can't have an abortion after 20 weeks. It was quite an interesting fight. We even have in the House, we have a OBGYN who's a Democrat that got up and spoke. And it's to hear the House Republicans and the House Democrats to get up, and everybody's got their own little story, but it was hard to get done. But us that believed in the bill, we fought and we held persistent, and we got the bill passed, and you can see the governor signed it.
Foster care, reasonable impairment. Is anybody here a foster parent or have ever been a foster parent in the past? The state of South Carolina is, we need about 1,500 more foster parents statewide. And there has been several initiatives launched through the Department of Social Services, through the governor's office, and other public-private sector partnerships to try to recruit more foster parents in the state. Well, one of the things that we did legislatively is to implement what's called the Reasonable and Prudent Parent Standard. And several states have done this. And what this means is that until this law was passed, if you were a foster parent and you wanted to take your foster child across the state line, you had to get approval from somebody in the Department of Social Services or your caseworker to go across the state line. So if you lived in North Augusta and you want to go to the Augusta Mall, you couldn't go to the mall with your foster child until you got approval from the caseworker. Well, you know, that's just not practical all the time, especially when you live in a border community. If you wanted to, if your foster child wanted to go down the street and spend the night at another person's house, you had to get approval from the caseworker. So what we did is we passed legislation that basically holds the foster parents to a reasonable and prudent parent standard and gives them the ability to make some of these decisions as a foster parent without having to have a layer of government bureaucracy they have to go through to get permission to do that.
Common sense.
The word out of Washington is the Department of Defense, Pentagon, is looking at another round of base closings, base realignments around the country. And that's a big deal for South Carolina. It's a big deal for this area, obviously, but for South Carolina as a whole, it's a big deal too. We got hit pretty good when this happened 20 years ago or so with Charleston, the Navy base. But we still have a significant military presence in South Carolina, especially in the Midlands around Sumter, and then over on the coast some too, especially down at Parris Island. But the Department of Defense is basically giving out a checklist, and they say, look, we're going to be looking at the states who are the most military friendly. So they give you this list of things that they think that you ought to consider in order to be more military friendly. And we've actually passed most of those things within the last few years. One thing that held up the longest was this legislation that would basically exempt military pension income from state income tax. There was already a partial exemption, and this is not a full exemption of what we passed, but it does phase in more of an exemption for military retirees from state income tax, which gives us a better reputation at the national level as far as military friendliness. But it's also a big deal too, because we actually get a lot of military retirees coming into South Carolina anyway, but there are some other states that are more friendly with the tax code. Of course, you got places like Tennessee and Florida that have no income tax at all. And you know, these folks are very well trained. Many times they're retiring at early ages, and they go back to work and doing other things, so they can be much more productive in that respect too. So this is something. This was a big fight trying to get this one passed, and it passed near the end of the session.
I was riding with the police one night here in North Augusta, and I'm a constable, so I ride with the police all the time. We went to a burglar alarm over in the Rapids to a guy's house, and it happened to be a colonel who just built a new house over there. And I was thanking him for moving to North Augusta and all, you know, being a good politician and a constable, whatever I had on my hat that day. But anyway, I was telling him that we were working on this bill, and he said, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yeah," because all of his buddies were asking him, "Why are you coming to South Carolina?" Because number one, his wife used to live here, so that was a big reason. So, but anyway, I was telling him about we were working on this because most of his buddies are going to the Grovetown area out there. He said, he said, "You pass this," he said, "they're all going to be coming to North Augusta or coming to South Carolina because it's a big incentive for them to come over here to not get their income taxed."
Roads. There was no gas tax increase. Probably everybody in here probably knew that, but we did not pass a gas tax increase. There was legislation that passed to reform the South Carolina Department of Transportation. I mean, this bill was a 2-year fight. It's not over. It's another issue we're going to deal with when we go back. The governor will appoint, under the reform, the governor will appoint all 8 commissioners with confirmation by the legislature. Those commissioners will then select the South Carolina Department of Transportation secretary. There will be $4 billion in state dollars for road and bridge repairs over the next 10 years through what we did legislatively. About half of it is using existing revenue to leverage into bonds for road and bridge repair and construction, and frees up other existing money for the South Carolina Department of Transportation to redirect the road and bridge improvements. In Aiken County, there are specific road improvements through that 2016 budget bill and other recent funding that goes back to 2013. Number one, a month ago on July, I think it was July 13th, we had the press conference and announcement for the I-20 bridge replacement and expansion. That was over at the Welcome Center in Georgia. You probably read about that in the newspaper. That will be moving forward as a joint partnership between South Carolina and Georgia. You will probably not see the actual construction of start where you actually see people actually taking the old bridges down, putting the new bridges up until I think 2019.
Yeah, the bids are supposed to be, the plans are supposed to be ready to let December of 2018.
December 2018, they'll let the plans. There's a lot of engineering and environmental work that has to be done on the front end in the interim before we get to that point. But
And that's the first time our two states have worked together like that to draw up a deal where we're going to work together on those bridges like that. It was a historical day for our two states, but we've been beating them up, man.
Yeah.
We want the roads, the bridges fixed.
Widening and resurfacing of portions of I-20, there will be substantial work done on I-20 you're going to see a lot of work done on I-20 between the Georgia state line and Lexington over the next probably 2.5 years. There's going to be large sections of it that are going to be resurfaced. There's going to be a 9-mile section of it starting on this side of Lexington that's going to be widened to 6 lanes. There's going to be a portion here from the Georgia line back that's going to be widened to 6 lanes. We're hoping we can get it widened back to exit 5. We know it's going to be widened to exit 1. We want to, we're still trying to push to try to get it widened to exit 5. It's going to be resurfaced to exit 5 for sure and beyond, but we want to talk to them about getting it widened to exit 5 if at all possible. There's 46.7 miles of state secondary roads that are being resurfaced in Aiken County right now under a contract that has to be done by June of 2017. And that includes Escalda Lake and Sutherland Lake roads. Those have actually already been done under that contract. If you live over in that area and you travel in that area, you probably have seen both of those roads have been resurfaced recently. Atomic Road is on a federal contract with federal funds that is set to be, I'm not sure if it's, I don't think it's full total resurfacing of the whole stretch down to Jackson, but there's a lot of work to be done on Atomic Road next year, as I understand it, under a federal contract that the DOT is involved with federal funding. And then there's some other North Augusta area roads that are going to be resurfaced under that contract that I mentioned involving Escalda Lake and Sutherland Lake, and that includes a portion of Carolina Springs. There's another DOT project that's going to resurface Old Aiken, and of course y'all know about the work that's being done down here on the east point of Vista currently.
And then we sent some additional money to the CTCs this year too, but they haven't made a decision on what they're gonna do, so they're still working on that, ranking those projects, but there'll be some additional money. There'll be some additional roads that get resurfaced over the next couple of years, other than what we're talking about up here from the CTC.
CTCs are county transportation committees. Each county has one. We have one in Aiken County, and we have one in Edgefield County. All 46 counties have one. But I tell you, a thing that we're seeing, there aren't enough paving contractors. There's only a couple, and they can only do so much. And so if you ever thought about getting into a business, you might think about getting into the paving business.
That's one of the big issues right now, actually. I mean, you know, most of the conversation around the state is that we need to put more money into roads and bridges.
Right.
The reality is they can't spend the money we've given them right now.
Right. I mean, they behind. They should have paid a whole lot more in Aiken County, but there's really only 2 contractors that's been bidding on the 2 deals, and you know how that goes. I mean, if those 2 contractors, you know, they pretty much set their own price. But if you ever thought about getting into a business?
So, I mean, just as a follow-up on that, I'll tell you this, one of the counties I represent is Saluda. I told you, we gave a bunch of money to the county transportation committees last year in the budget. Some of the counties have been spending that, they've been slow in spending it. Some of the projects that we've talked about are CTC projects. But the money that Saluda got last July is not actually going to be spent probably until the spring of 2017 because the contractor problem.
Right. They can't get anybody to do it.
Yeah, the backlog is so big. I mean, it's almost like, I mean, what we did this year was actually, it was a pretty big deal. $4 billion is a lot of money, right? That's not a solution to the overall problem, but it's a pretty good patch. But it's all, looking back at it now, we probably put too much money into it at one time that they're not capable of dealing with all of it. So there's going to be a little bit of a backlog. But you're going to be seeing cones on the road. You're going to be seeing work for the next several years because of some of the things that we've done. And then going forward, as Tom mentioned earlier, we're not done. We're going to have to do something addressing the long-term funding solution. So I think we're going to be having a lot of road work for a long time. I'll take it. So the first paragraph up there is an attention getter, I think. We increased spending by $130 per child, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, right? $130 a child, $208 million for $130 per child. Education is expensive, but I'll tell you also, and this isn't up there, but it's also by far the largest category of state spending is on K-12. A lot of people don't believe that, but that's true. It is by far and away larger than even the second highest spending category. But we put more money, we've been targeting some things in the last few years. So we targeted additional $10 million for guidance counselors this year, an additional $34 million for high poverty districts. And last year we targeted a good bit of money towards the poorer districts for technology upgrades. We continue with that this year. And then here's another thing too. A 2% salary increase doesn't sound like a whole lot of money, right? But 2% salary increase for teachers is over $23 million. So anytime you're talking about teacher pay, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it costs a whole lot of money. So just some of those numbers. This is a fun one.
Wow. This is an interesting one. Y'all all read the newspaper, saw on TV about the pipeline company that wanted to come here and run a pipeline from Belton all the way to Jacksonville, Florida. We three stooges right here are the ones that fought this. We didn't fight the company, we fought our laws, because our laws in our state have not been visited since 1950, and most of us weren't born then. But what we did is thanks to these guys here, because we had a Senate bill and a House bill, they were pretty much comparable, but the Senate fired up and got theirs passed first. Senator Young and Senator Massey and Senator Hutto were on the committee that spearheaded this to get this done. And so they got it out of the Senate, And then now it was all left up to me. I had big oil, I had people calling me, telling me, don't worry about this, this passed the Senate, don't worry about it, just forget about it, let it die, we're okay. I said, no. I said, the people back home want us to look at eminent domain. I said it correctly that time. I'll tell you all the joke about that. Anyway, so I said, I'm not giving up. And I said, that would look like I failed in the House. Because it was in our last days, I think it was our last week that we were there. And so basically what we did is we passed the bill that it is a 3-year ban on companies using eminent domain to take people's property away from them. We're going to form a study committee, and the study committee is Senator Massey, Senator Young, and Senator Hutto from the Senate. And I'm on it from the House, Russell Lott, and Enid Smalls. Enid Smalls is on it from the House. You got somebody from DHEC, you got somebody from Duke Scott's office of Regulatory, you got somebody from, like I said, DHEC, anyway, somebody, Forestry Association. We got a vast group, and I think we just got an email, we're fixing to have a meeting.
Yesterday.
Yeah, to look at our eminent domain laws, because it was not clear. So we didn't have anything against the pipeline company. We had, our problem was taking people's land and didn't want to give up their land. And our laws weren't clear on that. So our group that we formed is going to visit our laws, and we're going to study them, and we're going to go back first of the year and come up with some suggestions on how we would change our laws and make them more better for us. But again, there is a moratorium, and like I said, it starts in Belton, so it can't come through our state, at least for 3 years. But we immediately are going to form this committee. And Shane and I represent part of Edgefield County. I represent part of Aiken County where it's going to come through. He represents all of Aiken County where most of it was going to come through. And we did not have anybody run up to us and hug us and say, please get out of our way, we want to sell our land. 99% of the people that come up to us said, we don't want to sell our land, please help us. And so our laws weren't clear. And so this is what this study committee is going to do. We're going to come up with some suggestions and stuff.
And a lot of people, and just to follow up on this, but a lot of people did voluntarily give an easement to Kinder Morgan, to the pipeline company, right? And I mean, our position on that has been, that's fine, right? Do with your property what you want to do with it. I mean, the big issue that we had was that Kinder Morgan had a huge stick, and that if you didn't want to sell, if you didn't think their price was fair, they were going to resort to eminent domain. Right? I got a big problem with that. Now, if you want to sell, do whatever you want to do. Right? If you want to negotiate with them, it's fine. It's your property. Do what you want. We're not going to stop you from doing that. We're not even trying to stop the pipeline. We're just trying to prevent them from beating down on people and not paying what the property is worth.
I'd like to stand here and personally thank these two men right here for getting, it was my bill, House Bill 3799, and get it passed.
This was a hell of a fight.
You damn. I passed it out of the House 101 to 5, thinking, oh, this is going to be good. It goes to the Senate and all hell breaks loose. We fought and fought and fought and fought, but this was Bill Hickson's #1 request from my constituents. Please get a bill where we can go to Georgia and Georgia can come over here with a concealed weapon permit. That was my #1 request, probably y'all's too. Thanks to these men, and if Nikki Sester was here, our good friend Democrat, who was the minority leader, I would tell him thank you too, because it ended up, I spent so much time in the Senate, they were calling me Senator. Where's your desk, Senator? I said, I don't work over here. I said, I'm over here trying to get y'all going. It passed 35-3. Next to the last day we were there. I was standing up there talking about eminent domain, and Chairman White comes and puts his phone in front of me. He said, your gun bill passed. I said, well, I'm trying to pass eminent domain right now. Leave me alone. So anyway, all that came right there in the last week. But as you can see, what's going to be here in a minute. So August 24th, right here in this room, the governor's coming to do a ceremonial sign. She's already signed the bill. And the bill was written once she signs it, it becomes law. So it already is law. She's just coming to see North Augusta and see y'all and just come do a ceremony of signing. But that was the hardest thing I've ever done, to getting that done. But it's done now.
We had to play. We could probably have a separate conversation that could take a little while, just about the chess game and the strategy involved in pulling this off on the Senate side. We had to, it got kind of fun trying to figure out where all the moving pieces were and trying to figure out how to make it happen. But it really was a heck of a fight to try to make it happen. And it's one of those things where you really are playing chess with it. You're trying to get something done today so that in 4 days something else will happen. And it worked out. We had the final vote, what do you say, 35-3? Sometimes our votes are not indicative of where people really are, but it was.
We had one senator that was gonna do one thing with one amendment, and if he did, Marlon had 80 amendments. 50, he had 80 amendments. If that senator's amendment passed, he was gonna drop them 80 amendments. And you figured out the time, it would take how many months to go over those amendments, and we only had like 2 days. So, I mean, it was no way it was gonna pass. And, you know, we had the NRA in the office talking to them and shaking with them. I had the Turkey Federation calling. We had all congressmen calling, you know, get off. We want to pass it just like it is. And we got it.
You do? Sure. So, when the governor's here next week, if you want to have some fun, ask her about ethics. Because she will not be able to resist the bait. I mean, you know, we've been talking about ethics reform for the last several years, and there were two really big things, and we actually got those 2 really big things done this year. And this is also a big chess game in trying to make this happen. But the first one, the big one is that right now, currently, if you're a candidate for any office, not just legislative seats, but any office, you've got to disclose any type of potential income conflicts that you may have with government, right? So if you're running for school board and you've got some income from the government, you've got to disclose that, right? What we passed says that candidates are going to have to disclose the sources of their private income. We have never done that. Right? So it's going to make us, not just legislators, all candidates for any office are going to have to disclose the sources of their private income. Then disclose the amount, because you got to tell people where you're getting paid from, right? And that's potentially a big deal, right? The other thing we dealt with a lot was ethics complaints made against. We got all the attention where complaints made against legislators. Really, this extends beyond that. It extends to complaints made against any candidates or any office holder. The big attention was on legislators. And so what this is going to do from our perspective is that if there is an ethics complaint made against a legislator, there is now going to be an independent commission that's going to investigate those complaints. Because currently, if there's an ethics complaint against me, the Senate Ethics Committee investigates it. The Senate Ethics Committee prosecutes it. The Senate Ethics Committee decides whether I violated the Ethics Act. No, it's all in-house. Now, there are very good reasons for that. I think there are very good reasons for that. That's a whole other conversation, too. But there's clearly the perception that legislators protect their own. I don't know if that really happens as much as people think it does, because in many cases, I think we're probably harder on some of our own than other people are. But the perception is there. It's a real perception. So we've created this independent commission that's now going to investigate all complaints against legislators. And if they think there's probable cause that a legislator has violated the Ethics Act, this independent commission will actually, for lack of a better term, prosecute it. They'll present the case to the ethics committees, in my case in the Senate, or in Bill's case in the House. And then ultimately the body still are going to be the ultimate deciders. But that's a big deal too, having an independent investigatory and an independent prosecutorial system. That's a big change. That was the one that we had the most fight about. That's a 4-year fight just on that one right there.
Just real quick, we'll run through. Governor vetoed 51 budget items. The House sustained 12 of the 51. The Senate didn't sustain any of them. that doesn't reflect how Shane and I may have voted on the particular veto, but the Senate overrode all the vetoes that came to the Senate. The sustained vetoes included money for study to move Confederate relic room to Charleston, and overridden vetoes included funding to renovate the historic fireproof building in Charleston and engineering costs to expand Coastal Carolina football stadium.
Can I say one thing? One of those vetoes was my vetoes, and we sustained it. Any of y'all who travel I-20 coming into South Carolina sees the grass at the Welcome Center looks terrible. I was dealing with PRT to try to get them to cut the grass. I was dealing with DOT to get them to try to cut the grass. I could never get any answers. So I'm not on Ways and Means. I'm just a little fellow down there, but I'm trying to work my way up. And so I got with a Ways and Means guy, subcommittee chairman, and told him what my problem was. And he allowed me to do a proviso, which in that proviso, it said, which was part of the budget, which says that PRT, which those are the ones that take care of all the welcome centers now, would have to cut all the way to the pavement. What they're doing is they're cutting to the right-of-way, and all the grass looks real good right here, but when you get to the right-of-way, it's up about our waist. Just ride by and look at it when you see it. It's that way right now if they hadn't cut it today. So I had that in the budget that they would have to cut all the way to the pavement. The governor called me down and said, look, you're micromanaging government. And that's what was written by her explanation. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, well, why don't you call us? I said, well, I thought we had bigger things to do than cut grass, land us like a Volvo or Mercedes or GG Tire or something like that. She said, but you can call us. I said, okay, that's fine. So, and the little girl that helps me there, Haley Model, which she'll be here Thursday, she lives in North Augusta. She said, Governor, I've seen the grass like that. Yeah. So they said, give it to us. So I got up in front of the house and I said, let's sustain this veto. Everybody said, why? I said, because she asked us to do that, and I trust her that the grass is going to get cut. So far, and we sustained the veto. So far, the grass hasn't been cut.
She's going to be here next week.
Yeah, and she's going to be here, but I will tell you this, there's a new contract left that's supposed to start September 1st. And they're supposed to start cutting the grass. So if you don't see the grass cut, trust me, I'm on the phone with the governor.
It's not just this one either, I'll tell you.
Yeah, Shane travels a lot.
Yeah.
He saw it at every welcome center. But it's a shame because it's the entrance to our town and our state, and it looks like hell, you know?
These are some of the big issues that we expect next session. I mentioned the rules changes earlier, and that'll be a big issue in the Senate early on in the session at the end of this year. Early voting, road funding again, tax reform, restructuring of state government, more of that, education funding, restructuring only twice, it shouldn't be. Budget, Medicaid funding, Medicaid continues to grow in the state budget. That is the single largest item of expense in the state budget. It's over, all the Medicaid programs combined are over $7 billion. It's an enormous amount of money. And a lot of that money is federal money that comes to the state, and then there's a state match that has to be put up for certain Medicaid programs. Drug testing for government benefits, that's an issue that we've tried to get moving, and there's been some opposition to that. Retiree health insurance liabilities, the pension fund, and then also teacher recruitment. On Channel 12 this morning, there was an article, or if y'all saw Channel 12, if you were, or 26, I think it was on both stations. There was a story this morning about teacher shortage in South Carolina in the rural school districts. We're aware of this issue, and it's an issue that's going to have to be addressed. It's a shortage that's being projected over the next 10 years, and so that's on the teacher recruitment front. We talked about the Palmetto Pipeline. On the local level, the Jackson boat landing, it's the only boat landing on the Savannah River from North Augusta to Allendale County. And it's in need of repair, and we have secured funding to repair it, and the construction is actually going to start later this month to repair the Jackson boat landing. So if any of you use that boat landing to access the river, there should be substantial improvements to that over the next few months. We mentioned the I-20 bridges and widening, the 2014 ice storm money reimbursement. This is something that you probably read about this in the newspaper. I know Chairman Young from County Council and Sandy Haskell, if Sandy's here, I don't know, is Chairman Young still here? Ronnie Young? He may have left. But anyway, we are working to try to get the state to provide the additional it's not quite $12 million, it's a little over $11.5 million, of which about half of that money will come to Aiken County to be split between Aiken County, the city of North Augusta, the city of Aiken, the town of Jackson, and other municipalities within the county that sustain unreimbursed expenses as a result of February 2014 ice storm. And this is a big deal, and it's something that our delegation is working together on, and we've got other members of the General Assembly in the state, and we are committed to getting that funding by 2017. And then groundwater withdrawal concerns. This is a big issue that's starting to grow in the eastern part of the county. Windsor area kind of east and south of Wagner, area kind of north of Jackson. There's a lot of residents that live in the rural part, basically from Couchton east, that have begun to express concerns about their groundwater levels in their wells. And so Representative Taylor and Senator Setzler and I are meeting with DHEC and the Department of Natural Resources later this month. So you're probably going to hear more about this. There was an article in the Aiken paper two or 3 weeks ago about this issue. And the Augusta paper is probably going to end up picking it up at some point. So you're going to probably hear more about this over the fall. I know it's 9:15. I don't know if we got questions. Thank y'all for staying with us. I hope this has been informative.
If you have any questions, or you guys
We
stay around a
hang
few more
around,
minutes
yeah,
to answer questions, so let's give them